Happy new book day! Ooh la la dee doo 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 doo. Bing bing bing. Okay, this is More Adventures of the Great Brain by Tom Fitzgerald, and it is the second book in the story of the saga of the Great Brain and his brothers. Before I get started, I want to introduce, where'd you go? A new reading buddy. Boop, beep beep. I'm gonna name him Boop because I like it. Boop, beep beep. So we're gonna set our little reading buddy over here. Boop. I know. And we got our old reading buddy, Cuddle Bear. How you doing? Do you remember the story of this bear? One of the nurses gave it to me when I was in the hospital, and it was precious to me. And it's still precious to me, just like you. Where are you gonna put you? Well, if I put you there, you won't be able. Oh, look, Boop feels left out. Well, it's not really functional for me to have them both in my lap. What can we do? What can we do to? Hey, can we do that? Well, let's see. All right, we'll see if this works, but I think you guys will have to move because it seems uncomfortable to me. All right, let's go. Chapter 1. The Night the Monster Walked. There were two good reasons for the people in Aidenville to celebrate Christmas in 1896, besides the birth of Jesus. It was the year that Utah became the 45th state, and the year that everyone in town believed my brother Tom had reformed. Papa went around with a happy look, believing that he no longer had to worry about Tom making a fool out of him. Mama was all smiles, believing no angry mother or father would be calling her on the telephone to complain my brother had swindled their son out of something. Aunt Bertha looked as if Tom had suddenly sprouted wings. Uncle Mark, who was the marshal and deputy sheriff, thought all he had to deal with in the future would be lawbreakers. It was the first Christmas parents bought presents for their sons, believing my brother wouldn't try to connive their kids out of them. There was only one doubter in our midst, and that was my eldest brother, Sven. When he came home for the Christmas holidays from the Catholic Academy in Salt Lake City, Aidenville only had a population of about 2,500 people. About 2,000 were Mormon, and the rest Catholics and Protestants. We had a one-room schoolhouse where Mr. Standish taught the first through the 6th grades. Any parents who wanted their children to get more education had to send them to Salt Lake City. There were plenty places in Salt Lake City where the Mormons could send their kids for higher education, because the saints, as they prefer to be called, outnumbered other religions by 10 to 1. And there was more than one academy for the Protestants in the state capital, but only one Catholic academy. Sven was 13. He was named after my Danish grandfather on my mother's side, who had blonde hair like Mama. I was now 8 years old and would soon be 9. Tom was going on 12. I had dark curly hair and brown eyes like Papa. Tom didn't look like Mama exactly, but he didn't look like Papa. His hair wasn't blonde, and it wasn't dark. He was the only one in the family who had freckles. "What has happened to the great brain?" Sven asked me 2 days after his arrival home, as we were stringing popcorn to help decorate our Christmas tree. "He hasn't tried to connive me out of a single thing since I've been home." "TD is reformed," I said. My brothers and I always called each other by the initials of our first and middle names, because that's how Papa addressed us. We all had the middle name of D, just like Papa, because it was a family tradition, for Dennis. Sven held the darning needle threaded with a string in one hand and a piece of popcorn in the other hand. He stared at me like I was plumb loco. "Bourgeois," he said. A little conniver could no more reform than he could wash the freckles off his face. Well, I had never heard the word bourgeois before, and assumed it was a city slang word that Schwinn had picked up from the academy, or at the academy. But I knew what it meant just from the way he said it. I told him how Tom's great brain had helped Andy Anderson so he wasn't useless anymore with his peg leg, and how Tom had refused to accept the erector's set that he had been promised as payment if he helped Andy learn how to do his chores and play, peg leg and all. And I told Sven how Tom had given me back my genuine Indian beaded belt, which he had swindled me out of earlier in the year. This was also from the last book. Should you reference it, it's under D, G, T. I don't know why I did that. It's called Doing Granny Things. But I'm not going to change my mistake. But there it was. If you want to see the first book, scroll way back in playlists. Alright. I hope you made it this far. TD hasn't pulled a cricket stunt since, I concluded. Sven thought about what I told him for a moment. Once a conniver, always a conniver, Sven said. It doesn't sound like TD at all. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson both thanked Mama and Papa for what Todd had done for their son, I said. And I told them about him giving me my belt back. Sven got a sly look on his face. And what else did TD get you to tell Mama and Papa? Well, I said, he did ask me to tell them that he had his heart set on getting a bicycle for Christmas. He even got me to tell them that tell him the one he wanted at the ZCMI store. That's Zion's Corporate Mercantile Institute. Was the full name of the town's big general store owned by the Mormon Church. Some people called it the ZCMI store, and some people called it the co-op. Aha! Sven exclaimed. I knew it! TD. With all his cunning mind figured that a bicycle was worth more than an erector set, or an old Indian beaded belt. This pretending to reform is all an act to get Papa and Mama to give him a bike for Christmas. Sure enough, Tom got his bike for Christmas. And I got a new wagon. Sven got a pocket watch and a watch fob. I guess it was about the happiest Christmas of my life, because it was the first time I didn't have to worry about Tom trying to swindle me out of my present. Sven still had his doubts, and put them into words just before he left to return to the academy in Salt Lake City. I'd bet 10 to 1, J.D., he said, that the great brain resumes his career as a confidence man now that he has his bike. My oldest brother was sure right. Tom started out the new year in his usual conniving style. It wouldn't have been so bad if it had just been one of his usual swindles. But this one got so complicated that armed men patrolled the streets of Aidenville. Women and children had to remain behind locked doors. What happened? Papa, who was the editor and publisher of the Aidenville Weekly Advocate, was considered the smartest man in town because he was the only one who had ever gone to college. Uncle Mark was considered one of the smartest peace officers in Utah. By the time got through with his first scheme of the year, Papa was ready to admit that he was the dumbest man in town, except for Uncle Mark. It all started on our first day back to school during the morning recess. A new kid in town named Parley Benson was showing off a genuine Bowie knife his father had given him for Christmas. Parley was Tom's age, had yellow hair, and he always wore a coonskin cap. I knew Tom's great brain was working furiously to get that Bowie knife while he was riding me home on the handlebars of his new bike. I was enjoying the ride as I looked at the trees planted by early Mormon pioneers that lined both sides of Main Street. Aidenville was a typical small Mormon town, what quite grew up to date. There were electric light poles all along Main Street, there were light poles all along Main Street, and we had telephones. There were wooden sidewalks in front of the stores. Straight ahead, I could see the railroad tracks that separated the west side of town from the east side. Across the tracks, on the east side, were two saloons. Sheepman's Hotel, a rooming house, and some stores. Talk about on the wrong side of the tracks, huh? Maybe that's the way they set it up on purpose. They did it all for the idiom. It's the way we do it these days, all for the meme. Alright, back to it. Some Bowie knife that new kid got for Christmas, Tom said. I turned my head, and sure enough, he had that old scheming look on his face. Sven was right, I said. You only pretended to reform to get that bike for Christmas. You talk as though I'm some kind of crook, Tom said, pretending I hurt his feelings. Just because my great brain makes me smarter than any kid in town, and a lot of grown-ups, doesn't make me a crook. Pop always says that it's brains that count in this world. But Papa didn't say you were supposed to use your great brain to go around swindling people, I said. Who did I ever swindle? Tom demanded. Me and every other kid in town, I said, without a moment's hesitation. No two people can make a deal without both of them agreeing to it, right? He said. Right? And on all the deals we ever made, you agreed. Right? JD? I nodded my head. And no two people can make a bet without both of them believing they're going to win. Right? Again, I answered, wondering what he was leading up to. Then you've never... I'm sorry. Then you've either got to admit that you are stupid and an easy mark, or that I never swindled you in my life, Tom said. I sure as heck wasn't going to admit that I was stupid and an easy mark. Guess you're right, I said. I'm sorry I called you a crook. But you did call me a crook, Tom said. And when I tell Mama and Papa that you called your own brother a crook, it'll break their hearts. Please don't tell them, I pleaded. If I agree not to tell them, Tom said, I think you should be punished for daring to call me a crook. I'll do anything you want. Anything, I said quickly. Tom thought for a moment. If you do my chores for a week, I just might not tell Papa and Mama, he finally said. Well, that's a deal, I said. And how I wished I had learned to keep my big mouth shut. I knew if I told Papa and Mama that Tom was a crook, it would break their hearts. But I also knew if I told them I was stupid and an easy mark, that would break their hearts too. The more I thought about it, the more grateful I was to Tom for letting me off so easy. Different sense of morality in these days. You'll have to think about it for a little while. Because we forgot how to relate like this. That's why I have to read these books. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. How you do? Ooh, little boob is so cute. I get to name Boo. But I don't know. We don't have a name for Cuddle Bear. We might just have to keep calling him Cuddle Bear. All right. After we changed clothes, I filled up all the wood boxes in our kitchen, dining room, and parlor, and I began bringing in buckets filled with coal from our coal and woodshed. Mama and Aunt Bertha were kneading biscuit dough for supper. Mama tilted her head piled high with long golden braids and looked at me. "Why are you doing your brother's chores?" she asked. "It's all right, Mama," I said, as I put down a heavy bucket filled with coal beside our big kitchen range. "I'm perfectly satisfied with the deal." Aunt Bertha, who wasn't really our aunt, but lived with us so long she was just like one of the family, looked down at me from her big height as she brushed a strand of gray hair from her forehead with the back of her hand. She had hands and feet as big as a man's. "Deal?" she said, as if it were a dirty word. It was too good to be true. I knew it. Couldn't last. Tom is at it again. Mama looked concerned. "Is Tom D. taking advantage of you?" she asked. "No, Mama," I said, because I thought Tom had let me off easy. Tom sat on the corral fence while I fed and watered the chickens, milked cow, team of horses, and Sven's Mustang, Dusty. I was exhausted when I joined Tom on the corral fence. "That new kid, Parley Benson, sure likes to brag," Tom said. "You mean how he bragged about his father being an animal bounty hunter for the ranchers?" I asked. "Yes," Tom answered, "and how brave his father is, and how brave he is." "Well, I guess it does take a lot of courage to track down and kill mountain lions, wolves, coyotes, and other animals that kill livestock," I said. "It sure does, or sure it does. But it doesn't make Parley brave like his father," Tom said. "If there's anything I can't stand, it's a kid who boasts." If I knew Tom couldn't stand it, he was going to put a stop to it. "Are you going to put your great brain to work to cure Parley of his bragging?" I asked. I couldn't help but feel excited. Tom grinned. "And teach him a lesson at the same time," he said. "I'd hate to be in his shoes," I said. On the first Saturday after school had started in the new year, it was snowing in the mountains and raining in town. Tom went up to his loft in the barn and put his great brain to work on how to cure Parley Benson from bragging while I did all the chores. It continued to rain after we eaten lunch, and we went to the barn to wait for our friends, who always came there to play when the weather was bad. Tom and I were sitting on a bale of hay when Basil Kokovinis entered. He was a Greek boy whose father owned the Palace Cafe. He was Tom's age and had big dark eyes and black hair. "It's a pour down," Basil said as he took off his calf and yellow rain slicker. "Downpour," Tom corrected Basil, who had trouble with the English language since he'd been in this country less than a year. Danny Forrester, Sammy Leeds, and Parley Benson were the next to arrive. Parley and Danny were Tom's age, and Sammy 1 year older. Sammy had what Swin called a city slicker look. I'd never seen a city slicker, but assumed my brother meant Sammy always had a sly, know-it-all look on his face. Danny's left eyelid was half closed, like it was most of the time, as if one of him wanted to go to sleep and the other one half wanted to stay awake. Parley was wearing his coonskin cap and had his Bowie knife in a scabbard on his belt. "Oh my God, they let the children carry knives back in the day. Oh God, you can't trust kids these days. Why? Because they have no impulse control. Why? Because they have no discipline. Why? Because discipline's boring and patriarchal. Oh, sorry. Back to the story, shall we? Okay. Then Howard K. Jimmy Peterson, or sorry, then Howard K. and Jimmy Peterson, who were my age, came into the barn with rain dripping from their caps and slickers. Howard had a round face like a Halloween pumpkin. Jimmy's mother had always brought his clothes a size too large so that they would last for 2 years because she had no younger sons to wear Jimmy's hand-me-downs. This was the year Jimmy's clothes were too big for him and hung on him like scarecrows. "What are we going to play?" Sammy asked. "How about follow the leader?" Tom suggested. Then he looked at Parley. "And since Parley's been bragging all week about how brave he is, let's make him the leader." "I can do things none of you kids can do," Parley boasted as he removed the Bowie knife from his scabbard and laid it on a bale of hay. It didn't take me too long to believe it. Parley climbed up the rope ladder to Tom's loft with us following, and he went hand over hand across the rafters to the other side of the barn. We could all follow him, but on the way back, Parley swung himself and only grabbed every other rafter. Howard, Jamie, and I had to drop out. Then Parley went hand over hand to a rafter. I stood bug-eyed as he hung by his toes from the rafter. And then he let go with his toes, and I was sure he'd dash his brains out on the floor of the barn, but he only turned a flip-flop in mid-air and landed on his feet. That was the end of playing Follow the Leader, because not even Tom or Basil could do a stunt like that. Sammy patted Parley on the back. "What a stunt," he said. "I guess that makes you the bravest kid in town, all right." "I wouldn't say that," Tom said. Would you say the circus acrobatics are the bravest people in the world? What real courage does it take? What takes real courage is to do something nobody else has ever done. I know if Basil and I practice, we can learn how to do that stunt. What takes real courage is an explorer going into a wild and strange country where no man has ever been. "Well, my pa goes places no man has ever been," Parley boasted. "We were talking about you, not your father," Tom said. Now, if a boy had the courage to go someplace, like the entrance chamber of Skeleton Cave, at night, knowing there are monsters and big snakes in the cave, that would take real courage. "Baloney," Sam said. "Frank and Alan Jensen were lost in the cave before you and your Uncle Mark rescued them. If there were real monsters and big snakes in the cave, why didn't they attack you?" "The only thing that saved us from the monsters and the big snakes," Tom said with a serious look on his face, "was that the Jensen brothers had their dog Lady with them, and Uncle Mark and I had JD's dog Brownie with us. I saw plenty of monsters, but they'd never seen a dog or heard a dog bark, and they were afraid. I'm talking about going to the cave without any dog to scare away the monsters." Parley patted his Bowie knife in his scabbard. "I bet I won't be afraid with my Bowie knife," he said. Tom picked a straw from a bale of hay and put it in his mouth. "I wasn't thinking of betting," he said, as the straw wriggled up and down. "But now that you mention it, I bet you're I'll bet you were afraid to meet me in the entrance chamber of Skeleton Cave next Saturday night after curfew." "Why not tonight?" Parley said. "You're new in town. I want to be fair and give you a chance to find out all you can about the cave. It's a bet, Parley said. But we haven't bet anything yet, Tom said. Tell you what I'll do. I'll bet my air rifle, my jackknife, and 25 cents in cash against your Bowie knife that you're afraid to meet me. Then Tom shrugged. If we both show up, the bet is off. It's a bet, Piercy said quickly. I know I'll be there. The next morning, I finished my last chore of doing all of Tom's chores and my own chores just in time to help Papa and Tom freeze the ice cream for our Sunday dinner. Tom's great brain worked like 60 that day. When he came down from his loft about an hour after dinner, he had a big grin on his face. Your great brain did it! I shouted as he came out of the barn and into our corral, where I had been standing guard to see he wasn't disturbed. Tom nodded. Going to convince Parley Benson there are monsters in the cave, he said, and that'll make him afraid to meet me there. How? I asked, curious as all get out. Tom ignored my question by asking one. Have you ever seen the footprint of a monster? No, I answered. Has anybody in town ever seen the footprint of a monster? Tom asked. I don't see how, I said. Then nobody knows what the footprint of a monster looks like, Tom said with a grin. I'm going to make footprints of a monster. Give me your word you won't say anything to Papa or Mama or anybody, and I'll let you help. I sure didn't want to be left out. Give my word, I promised. We'll saddle up Dusty first, Tom said. If we meet any kids, just tell them that we're going for a ride. After we'd put the saddle on and bridle on Dusty, ouch, ouch. Ooh, I'm getting cramps in my foot. Okay, we'll saddle up Dusty first. I'm sad. If we meet any kids, just tell them that we're going for a ride. After we put the saddle and bridle on Dusty, I watched Tom pick up a gunny sack. He mounted the Mustang and rode it out of the corral, waiting for me to shut the gate. Then, he helped me up behind him. Tom guided the Mustang up and down the alleys and in the roundabout way until we were in the back of the slaughterhouse by the stockyards. The odor was terrible because there were piles of old steer hooves, hides, bones, and skulls. Tom got off Dusty with the gunny sack, and he went to the pile of hooves and picked out 3 split-toed ones, which he put in the gunny sack. He didn't say a word until we were back in the barn and he had put Dusty back in his stall. Go to the tool shed and get the saw, a hammer, and some horseshoe nails, he ordered me. When I returned, Tom held the hooves on a bale of hay and sawed off the bone on the top so that they would be level. He told me to get a shovel and bury the pieces of bone behind the barn. And when I came back, he had a piece of board which was to be used for kindling wood. He sawed off 2 pieces about 1 foot square, and then he got an old belt out of Papa's from his loft and cut off 2 pieces of leather about 6 inches long. Now, J.D., he said to me, you go outside and stand guard. Don't let anybody in the barn. I was curious as anything, but did as I was told. I stood outside the barn door where I could hear Tom hammering inside the barn. Finally he called to me to come inside. Shut the door and stand with your back against it, he said. Then he held up two pieces of board so I could see what he'd done. He'd nailed three of the halves of the he nailed three of the halves of the steer's hooves to the bottom of each board, with the toes all pointing in different directions. Then he put the boards on the ground, and I could see he'd nailed a strap across the top of each board. I stood bug-eyed as Tom stuck the toes of his shoes under the straps, and then he walked a few steps and turned around. "Behold, the footprints of a monster," he said. I looked at the footprints he made in the dirt. They looked like the tracks of a huge three-toed animal. Tom began rubbing his hands together. "When I get through, Parley and the kids will swear there were monsters in Skeleton Cave." Tom took the gunny sack and erased the footprints in the dirt. Then he said triumphantly, "Bowie knife's as good as mine now. And I'll sneak out after curfew Friday night to make the footprints from Skeleton Cave down to the river and back. Saturday morning, all I've got to do is get Parley and the other kids down by the river so they can see the tracks. If Parley thinks there are monsters in that cave, he will never meet me Saturday night." "Why would the monster come out of the cave?" I asked. "I'll make 'em think the monster came down to the river to get a drink of water," Tom answered. I shivered. "Maybe there are real monsters in the cave," I said. I sure didn't see any, Tom said. "All Uncle Mark and I saw were a lot of bats." "What if Frank and Alan Jensen tell Parley there's nothing but bats in the cave?" I asked, only wanting to help. "I'm going to take care of that right now," Tom said. "I'm going to remind them I saved their lives. And they owe me a favor. I never told you this before, J.D., but Uncle Mark made Frank and Alan and me a promise we'd say we'd seen monsters and giant snakes in the cave." "Why would he do that?" I asked. "To scare any kids from ever going exploring in the cave again," Tom answered. "You never told me that," I said, feeling cheated. "Would I lie to my own brother?" Tom asked. The next morning during recess, I saw Parley Benson talking to Frank and Alan Jensen. They sure must have laid it on thick because Parley looked positively pale. I thought Friday would never come, but it finally did. I locked my dog Brownie and the pup up in the barn after supper. When it was bedtime, I got undressed, but Tom kept his clothes on. He waited until curfew whistle had blown, then climbed out our bedroom window and shinnied down the elm tree. I was determined to stay awake, but the next thing I knew, it was morning. Tom was still asleep. I woke him up. "How did it go?" I asked, all excited. "Perfect," he answered. "We went all the way to the small..." Oh, this was a long chapter. Holy cow. Oh, seriously? Oh, hell and Jesus. Alright, we're going to stop it there. This is a part A. Oh, my Lord. Love y'all. See you later. Good night. Don't let the bed bugs bite, etc., etc.